Ever wonder how a bunch of Germanic tribesmen turned into the architects of modern Europe? Welcome to the wildly chaotic and hilariously unpredictable world of the Franks. Picture this, it's the 5th century, and Europe is about as organized as a toddler's playroom. Enter Clovis, the king who decided it was high time to tidy up this messy continent, one battle at a time. With a talent for diplomacy that could put the best politicians to shame, Clovis united the fractious tribes and went from local strongman to the first king of the Franks, all while wearing a crown that likely looked better than it felt. In this video, we'll unravel the epic saga of the Franks, from their humble beginnings to the grand reign of Charlemagne. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you might even find yourself rooting for a guy whose name sounds like it belongs in a medieval sitcom. Ever heard of a guy called Pepin the Short? Yeah, his name raises a lot of questions. So grab your favorite snack and let's dive into the glorious chaos of the Frankish Empire, where history is not just informative, it's downright entertaining. Who knew the past could be so full of unexpected twists and giggles? Think back to the 5th century, a time transformed them into a force to be reckoned with, all while solidifying his reputation as the original founding father of the Franks. If Clovis could see the Europe of today, he'd probably give himself a well-deserved pat on the back. When we talk about Charlemagne, we're talking about a guy who could walk into a room and everyone would know he meant business, even if they didn't understand a word of his Frankish dialect. Charlemagne wasn't just a king, he was a conqueror, a reformer, and an all-around medieval superstar. They called him Carolus Magnus, or Charles the Great, and if you think that sounds a bit grandiose, well, Charlemagne had a knack for living up to his name. Charlemagne inherited a growing kingdom, but he wasn't content with the status quo. He had visions of an empire that stretched beyond what the Franks had ever controlled, and he wasn't shy about using a little force to get what he wanted. His strategy: if he conquered you, he offered two options: convert to Christianity or face some consequences. And by consequences, I mean he wasn't afraid to throw down the gauntlet in the most dramatic way possible. One of Charlemagne's most famous campaigns was against the Saxons, a battle that dragged on for over 30 years. Imagine that, an entire lifetime spent trying to persuade a stubborn neighbor to see things your way. Charlemagne's persistence paid off, and by the time he was finished, the Saxons were baptized, converted and added to his rapidly expanding empire. But Charlemagne wasn't just about battles, he had a softer side too. Picture this towering warrior who could command entire armies, bending over parchment with a quill, determined to learn how to write his own name. That's right, Charlemagne valued education, and he wanted his kingdom to value it too. He launched what historians call the Carolingian Renaissance, a movement to revive learning, literacy, and the arts across his empire. In his court, scholars were like celebrities. and Charlemagne encouraged the best minds of his time to gather in his palace at Aachen. And speaking of Aachen, Charlemagne was a bit of a home decorator, but his taste was, let's say, bold. His palace chapel, lavish enough to make any Roman emperor a little jealous. But Aachen wasn't just about showing off. It became the cultural and intellectual heart of his empire, where knowledge flowed as freely as the feasts and celebrations. Then came the crowning moment, literally. On Christmas Day, in the year 800, Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III in St. Peter's Basilica. This wasn't just any old coronation, it marked the revival of the Western Roman Empire, symbolizing Charlemagne's status as the ultimate ruler of Western Europe. It was a moment that changed history, with Charlemagne sitting on a throne that symbolized unity for a fractured continent. But Charlemagne's story has a bit of a twist. While he expanded his empire and fought for unity, he was never able to consolidate it into a single, cohesive nation. After his death, his empire fragmented, and the once mighty Frankish Empire split among his grandsons, laying the groundwork for what would eventually become modern France and Germany. Charlemagne's legacy was both grand and complicated, a blueprint for the Europe we know today, and a reminder that sometimes the best-laid plans still end in a little bit of chaos. So what do we remember Charlemagne for today? Not just his military prowess or his grand reforms, but his sheer determination to unite Europe under a single banner. He was a king who dreamed big, fought hard, and left a legacy that echoes across centuries. If he were alive today, Charlemagne would probably have his own reality show, teaching us all how to conquer our goals, quite literally. And for a guy called Charles the Great, I'd say he earned every bit of it. The Franks weren't just military masterminds, they were cultural trailblazers too, whether they knew it or not. Picture this. In a time when laws were often just who has the biggest sword, the Franks brought something new to the table, a written legal code. Yep, they had laws set down in ink, not just in muscle. Known as the Salic law, it was a mix of fines, family values, and very specific penalties for stealing pigs. Because in the Frankish world, nothing said law and order like keeping your neighbour's pigs safe. The Franks also left their mark on religion. While Clovis's conversion brought Christianity to his kingdom, Charlemagne took things up a notch. Not only did he make Christianity the backbone of his empire, but he also promoted a standardized liturgy, aligning his empire under one faith and creating a religious identity that would bind Europe together. Charlemagne's reforms didn't just spread faith, they spread a sense of unity across a patchwork of regions, languages and cultures that were starting to feel, dare we say, a little like a family. And here's where things get interesting. Charlemagne's Carolingian Renaissance wasn't just a fancy name. Under his rule, monks became the guardians of knowledge, copying texts by hand in monasteries, effectively becoming Europe's first librarians. Without those monks, much of ancient Roman and Greek knowledge might have been lost to time. Imagine what today's libraries would look like without them. We'd all be relying on shaky internet connections and Wikipedia for everything. But the Frankish cultural impact wasn't just about books and religion, it was also about legacy. Charlemagne's empire may have splintered, but his dream of a united Europe planted a seed. His crowning as Emperor of the Romans was the first time a Western leader had been acknowledged as an emperor since Rome fell. Fast forward a few centuries, and that idea of unity would inspire the Holy Roman Empire, the European Union, and even the concept of a shared European identity. In the end, the Franks' cultural legacy was a bit like a patchwork quilt, stitched together from different influences, shaped by charismatic leaders and built to last. They left Europe with a framework for law, religion, and even identity that echoes through the centuries. So next time you hear about European unity, you might want to thank a Frank. As we wrap up our journey through the history of the Franks, let's take a moment to consider their lasting legacy in our modern world. The influence of the Franks is not just confined to dusty history books or ancient ruins, it's alive and well in ways that might surprise you. Take the legal systems of many European countries, for instance. The principles laid down in the Salic law have echoed through the centuries, influencing the development of modern legal codes. The idea of a written law that applies to everyone, regardless of status, was revolutionary in its time and remains a cornerstone of justice today. And let's not forget about education. Charlemagne's vision of a literate and educated populace led to the establishment of schools and the preservation of classical texts. This commitment to learning laid the groundwork for the Renaissance and the scientific advancements that followed. So, the next time you pick up a book, or attend a class, you might want to thank Charlemagne and his monks for keeping the flame of knowledge alive. But perhaps the most profound impact of the Franks is the concept of European unity. Charlemagne's dream of a united Europe may have seemed far-fetched in his time, but it planted the seeds for the future. The idea that diverse regions could come together under a common identity is a legacy that lives on in the European Union today. The echoes of Charlemagne's empire can be felt in every meeting of the EU, in every policy aimed at fostering unity and cooperation among European nations. Even in our cultural symbols, the legacy of the Franks endures. The fleur-de-lis, once a symbol of Frankish royalty, is now a ubiquitous emblem found in art, architecture, and even sports teams across the globe. It serves as a reminder of a time when the Franks were shaping the course of history. So, as we look to the future, let's remember that the past is never truly gone. The Franks may have started as a group of wandering tribes, but their impact has woven itself into the very fabric of our modern world. Their story is a testament to the power of vision, leadership, and the enduring influence of a united people. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Franks and their legacy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Who knows what other historical adventures await? Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.